Hello again, Emga Kabigan. Kuya Kababligan here with another tale to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. This story isn't just mine, it's one that many Filipinos can relate to, especially those of us who've inherited a deep sense of dread from the places we call home. I share this with the hope that it'll remind you to always be aware of your surroundings and perhaps inspire you to share your own stories. Many of you have asked about more tales from our haunted ancestral home. There are plenty, but one story stands out the most for me. I call it Night Light. Some of you might remember the old radio show Gabi and Lagim. It was a staple in my mom's home when she was young, a constant companion for her and her siblings as they huddled around the radio at night, lazy today. One evening, after listening to a story about a Ouija board, my mom, her three youngest siblings, and their nanny were together in the old house. The nanny, often too preoccupied to pay close attention to the children, let them play on their own most of the time. But on this particular night, she would deeply regret that. My mom, curious as always, decided to make a makeshift Ouija board. She used a piece of paper and a thick coffee glass, one of those old glasses that magnified everything underneath. She scribbled out the letters, numbers, and the words yes, no, hello, and goodbye. Why did they do this? Well, it was the old days, and without the internet or much on TV, they had to entertain themselves. And sometimes, curiosity leads to danger. Lazy today, they began as you'd expect, asking if anyone was there. At first, it was all fun and games. They took turns moving the glass, my mom thinking her younger siblings were pushing it to get a reaction. But then something shifted. They asked again, "Is anyone here?" The glass moved on its own to yes. "Where are you from?" My mom asked, still convinced her siblings were messing with her. The glass moved slowly. First, it slid to H, then to E, then L. That's when my mom's temper flared. She shouted at her siblings, accusing them of trying to scare her. They all denied it, their faces pale with fear. But before they could say another word, the glass spun wildly and landed on L. They froze. Just then, every light in the room went out. The air turned icy cold, and the room filled with a suffocating darkness. The radio, which had been quiet, suddenly blared Gabi and Lagim louder than they had ever heard it before. The only light in the house now came from a single, narrow beam that cut through the blackness like a knife. The nanny, sensing danger, rushed to them. Without hesitation, she grabbed the children and huddled them into the light, her arms shaking as she tried to protect them. But the darkness wasn't still. It felt alive, like something was lurking just beyond the reach of the light, circling them, waiting for its chance to strike. The radio dial twisted violently, changing stations, but only fragments of words came through. Two phrases were crystal clear. "I am here, and why have you summoned me? Lazy today." The nanny, her voice trembling, shouted into the darkness, "You are not welcome here." Suddenly, the beam of light blinked out and reappeared across the room. With no time to waste, the nanny dragged the children through the dark, moving toward the light once again. The darkness seemed to throb around them, pressing closer, and the radio screamed, "Gabi and Lagim," followed by the chilling howl of a wolf. The children began to cry, calling for their mother, their voices small and helpless against the malevolent force that surrounded them. But their fear only seemed to feed whatever it was that stalked them. Once again, the nanny shouted, "You are not welcome here." Then, as if in desperation, she asked, "What is your name?" The beam of light moved again, flickering weakly on the other side of the room. Sweat drenched the nanny's face, but with a strength born of pure will, she gathered the children and led them back into the light. Her hands fumbled as she reached into her pocket, pulling out a rosary. She pressed it into the children's hands and commanded them, "Pray, pray with everything you have. Do not let go, lazy today." The light around them was fading, and the nanny knew that if it disappeared, they would be left at the mercy of whatever evil was circling them. But as the children's prayers grew louder, something began to change. The light flickered, then grew stronger. It was working. Gabi and Lagim blared again, the wolf's howl echoing through the house. But this time, the radio sputtered, dying out into silence. With renewed strength, the nanny screamed into the dark, "You are not welcome here." Her voice quivered, but she kept going. "This is a house of God. These children's souls are not for you." Then, from right beside them, a voice cold, hollow, and dripping with malice whispered, "Their souls." The nanny's grip tightened on the rosary, her voice rising above the children's prayers. "You are not welcome here," she shouted one last time, her words shaking the very air around them. "This house belongs to God. You cannot take them." The darkness trembled, the air thickened with tension. And then, just like that, it was over. The lights flickered back on, as if nothing had happened. The room was quiet, the radio now dead, and the suffocating darkness had vanished, lazy today. At that moment, my great-grandparents burst through the door, my great-grandfather wielding a jungle bolo, ready to fight whatever evil had come for the children. Somehow, they had felt it to the darkness, the threat. They had come, ready to defend the family with their lives. No one ever spoke about that night again. But the next day, my great-grandparents went straight to the local albulario and had each child blessed. They each received a living cross to carry with them at all times. If you're unfamiliar with the living cross, well, that's a story for another time. This is just one of the many stories from my life. If you enjoy these tales, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, keep your third eye open and always respect the unknown. Lazy today.